Hello and welcome to another installment of Nota Nada. I'm not Zim, and today we'll be having a look at the Sunset Rollercoaster album, CASSA NOVA. Sunset Rollercoaster is a city pop act of sorts that's hailing from Taiwan and has been active since 2011. They're currently standing in the forefront of the whole Eastern independent music scene while not falling into any of the stereotypes or sounds that the Eastern scene is generally known for, like J-rock or K-pop, or even within Taiwan itself. They have a very heavy homage to the 80s synth pop kind of music, but to put them under the city pop umbrella is doing kind of a disservice to them because they offer so much more than just standard city pop from their catalog. They don't just have the standard dreamy pop tunes that are long and very listenable, very nice while being repetitive, but they also have songs that are slow, soft and intimate, while also having like very fast-paced, funky tunes and very intense synth work within like the artillery of like songs that they have to offer. Their journey towards paying an homage to the 80s synth pop music has only started not too long ago. It started from the Jinji Kiko EP with Burgundy Red and My Jinji as the tracks that started it all off. And it's very interesting because prior to that, their debut effort, Bossa Nova, is more closely related to indie rock than I would say 80s synth pop. So it's a very interesting transition to see them continuing down this line of like cheesy, groovy, sweet, romantic kind of songwriting. And definitely CASSA NOVA is an amalgamation of that in a very high level. CASSA NOVA as a whole has a very interesting narrative behind it. The songs are mainly about introspection and looking back on the past from a perspective of a guy who's kind of going through some sort of like quarter life crisis while having some offcuts that talks about very sweet, innocent love, which I find actually quite fitting. These two topics as a whole is a very nice combo. It's sort of like a hopeless romantic trying to grow up and be a better version of himself, but at the same time doesn't want to face a lot of the hard truths that life has to offer. And this whole narrative really fits well into CASSA NOVA as a whole, as they push more into like more intensive instrumentations and more mellowed out melodies and song structures, but it doesn't mask away how insanely talented all the musicians are in this band. The rhythm section as a whole really nailed it throughout the whole album itself. They lay down a lot of insanely funky grooves throughout the fast tracks, the more higher energy tracks, while still being very impactful in the slower cuts and the deep cuts of this album. It's really to no surprise seeing how the frontman is quite a famous session artist, session guitarist within the Taiwan community itself, and also the drummer has its own band that produces some very interesting material as well. So the whole band is a group of very talented musicians, and you could still tell that they know what they're doing and they're not just like fooling around or like doing some whack ass shit. And because of that, there are specific cuts in this album where I find very impactful or very interesting, and I want to talk about them. Summum Bonum has got to be one of my favorite like faster cuts in this whole album, but the rest of the fast cuts are very similar in a sense where the soul of it is heavily borrowed from disco music in the 80s, and they wear it very, very well. Like the key bass, the synth, and like I said, the rhythm section in Summum Bonum, it falls into place just so perfectly. The transitions, the fills, and accompanied with a vocal line that doesn't take itself too seriously while being very playful, very flirty, really like melts well together as a cohesive song. And this Summum Bonum track is probably the most city pop track that they have to offer throughout this whole album, but because of its why I love it so much. One of the most interesting cuts throughout this album, I would say it's Slow and Oriental. These are actually two songs, but they are back to back, and listen to it in the album without shuffle on and just let it play, you wouldn't even realize that Slow and Oriental is a different song. The transition between these songs are so seamless, and talking about similar topics, it just fits so well. Like Oriental doesn't sound like it's an interlude of sorts, rather than it being a standalone track in itself. If you were to just listen to it, it doesn't fall short on its own. It doesn't need the support of slow to build up to it. And slow on its own, I would say it's the perfect opener to this section of very intense, building up into a very intense section of the album. As slow is this, it starts off like just very intimate with just guitar and him singing, but it slowly unfolds itself as well, with synth coming into the second half and having his vocal line getting like more and more interesting throughout slow, and having a similar melody line transition into a second song is no small feat on itself. And I feel like how the frontman ended the song and pushed it to Oriental itself, it's by far one of the best arrangements I've heard in years in terms of this kind of format. I also want to talk sort of briefly about Libidream. I think it's the most intense track that they have to offer in this album. It stands out as well because it has no correlation to city pop, funk, disco whatsoever. It's just slow moving synth passage, soundscape, almost psychedelia, electronica, but how it slowly unfolds itself as the song progresses, it's really, really amazing. I think they really put all their experimentation and pushing the grounds into they compacted everything, all the ideas, crazy ideas that they have, and they put it into Libidream, and it really showed because it's just so dense and there's so much going on, but in the best way possible. The front section, as it moves slowly, it's still not completely just like very light-hearted. It's the undercurrents of it. There's the bass line that's moving up and down the fretboards that's quite frantic, while having this very strong, slow but hard-hitting kick drum. It slowly morphs into this heavier and heavier and heavier until at the end it's almost like this grand ending of some great superhero movie of sorts. But it doesn't just end there. Once the intensity peaks, they unfold something new. I'm not going to really spoil it because it's a very interesting journey that you should take on as well. But after that, you think that it's over, but it's not. There's another unfolding happening, and there's another plot twist towards the very, very end, and it's mind-boggling, and how the band as a whole managed to pull this off. I would never expect Sunset Rollercoaster to pull off something like this, but they did, and they pulled it off so well. So like this track, like made me tip my hats off to them and say, like, wow, you guys are really, really something else. Lastly, I want to round off the tracks with this track, and I feel like this track deserves a mention because it kind of shows a perfect example of why I say that they have almost an OST kind of sound in this album. 10 Year Taipei, the closing track, is a very, very well-written track that you would have not thought that it's an ending to an album. It felt like it's an ending OST to an 80s movie with the warm guitars. Like, this is the only time that acoustic guitar is ever used in this whole album, and it's used very cleverly, with that being in play with the pads that is warm, that is just, it's like drinking hot Milo on a rainy day, and it just fills your heart with this very nice sweetness. And the frontman sings with such a nice tone that isn't really present in the previous tracks throughout the whole album, because this undertone of like struggle and this undertone of like sadness within his voice, or if not, then it would be just sheer playfulness and like flirtatious kind of delivery. But in 10 Year Taipei, it's different. It's almost larger than life. He sounds like he's giving you a lesson in a very, very good way. He's trying to pass down what he has learned throughout the years being alive, and I find that that's a very interesting way to deliver a song, and a very interesting way to end the album as a whole. It's dreamy, but it's not surreal in any sense. It's a very grounded track where a lot of the instrumentations are very organic. are very up close. There's no like crazy effects going on, but it's not stripped down either. It's still full. It's still grand sounding. And as this track ends, just a little Easter egg at the end for you. After you finish this track, you listen to the outro. Remember the outro. Go to Jinji Kiko's EP. Play Burgundy Red. You see the Easter egg. CASSA NOVA as a whole, I feel like it stands out on its own really well in the midst of the resurgence of city pop because of so many different things that they have to offer in the album itself. While they are being playful and cheesy with a lot of their lines or their writing, you gotta admit that this kind of music takes a lot of skill and a lot of like talent to pull off. So, and that's the reason why, despite the resurgence of city pop, now people are taking up the sound or trying to adopt the sound because it takes a lot of effort to really nail this genre of music. And I really do applaud them to venture into this area of music, just guns blazing, and while holding no restraints and no ties to the tradition that it is, as they tread new grounds and as they push what it could be for synth pop as a whole. It's just a very heartwarming album. It's playful, it's fun, and for that, I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5. If you haven't given this album a listen, shame on you. You should go and listen to it. Or in fact, for all the upcoming Nota Nada releases, if it's an album that you've not listened to it before, please listen to it first before hearing what we have to say about it, because we might heavily influence your take on music, and that's not good, sir. If you like what we're doing, consider liking, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you want either me or Zim to review any specific album that you liked or you find interesting or we should be talking about. And yeah, see you in the next one, buddy.